Dude, this is going to be a fun one. The art of rivalry in marketing.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Madmen.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Madmen.
I'm mad.
What do you think? What do you think about prepping for this one?
You know, I couldn't help but think it was like talking about trying to encapsulate you versus Salim in most of these.
Oh, man. Unfortunately, we're not going to have him today, but I know he's going to put a POV together and come back at the next one to challenge some of these ideas. But
For sure.
no,
for
that's
sure.
what we got. That's what we got for you guys today. Just Samir and Adil, and this is my episode. So appreciate you guys jumping on. This will be a cool one. You know, we got some really fun material prepped here where we're calling brand battlegrounds. I thought it'd be fun to take a close look into different brands and how they fight against each other in the world of advertising and marketing. Some subtle and some not so much. A lot of brands get real aggressive in advertising, and it gets really fun. A lot of people talk about it, but it's all strategic. It's all intentional. So I thought it'd be fun to take a look at some of my favorites. Some rivalries still exist today, just in a completely different way. So we got one deep dive to go through, and then we're going to go through some quick hit case studies when brands go head to head in a bid to win consumer hearts. We'll give you guys a little bit of a background on the origination of some of these rivalries, and then some of the creativity involved in how it come through, and then a little look at what that means today. So, yeah, appreciate you guys jumping on. You guys, Adil, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right. So for our deep dive, I got one of the most enduring brand battles in marketing history, the Cola Wars between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I'll give you a little bit of background. Coca-Cola, created in 1886 by John S. Pemberton, and it really created the cola market, gained widespread distribution very quickly, and in a short 7 years later, Pepsi was created, and it entered the market as a direct competitor. Pepsi was positioned as the cost-effective, cheaper alternative to Coca-Cola. Twice the size for the same price during the Great Depression, where price was a really big deal. And that was a significant move in establishing Pepsi's market presence. So much of the soda industry was driven by geographic distribution. You have to remember that in the first half of the 20th century, it was extremely difficult to get product to different parts of the country. Supply chain logistics just wasn't a thing until the 70s. And once Pepsi started getting into Coke territory, in 1975, Pepsi launched its first Pepsi Challenge, a campaign that would show consumers preferred the supposedly sweeter Pepsi over Coca-Cola in a blind taste test. This was a huge culture shock to Coca-Cola fans everywhere, that it became a national challenge to hold these blind taste tests in shopping malls across the country. Coke learned that consumers are seemingly more interested in a sweeter cola formula, so they reformulated and launched New Coke, which ended up a commercial disaster. Leading to such a significant backlash, Coca-Cola reverted back to its original formula, known as Coca-Cola Classic. That's why it's named Classic, because they wanted to come back from that New Coke world. And it recovered its market position very quickly. These two giants have been at it for literally 100 years. And today, their biggest battles aren't even in the cola segment. Of course, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are still the biggest soda brands in the world, but the Coca-Cola Company and PepsiCo have diversified their portfolio to get into other beverage categories where there is so much more opportunity to share, especially as consumers are more health conscious today. Even their distribution is divided. It's just understood. Coke has got McDonald's, Pepsi has Taco Bell. Coke has Domino's, Pepsi has Pizza Hut. Coke has Chili's, Pepsi has Applebee's. Coke has Olive Garden, Pepsi has IHOP. It's like they had just agreed to divide up the country and all of its popular food chains and our favorite fast food spots, and just have agreed to securing those territories and running with it. It's really fun to see what the Cola Wars had become from what they were. Super aggressive, a lot of celebrity endorsement strategy, a lot of social attacking each other, and a very blatant advertising that was calling each other out for its flaws. but it seems to just have some of this kind of understood competitiveness to it, that even in the cola wars between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, you can still both survive and thrive. And even today, Pepsi has a little bit of advantage globally to Coca-Cola. But Coca-Cola is still the number one brand in the world. So I think something that this rivalry really taught me was, even if you have competition, it doesn't mean it could be a threat to your business. I think you can find your strategic ways in, and you kind of play together and grow the segment. And I think Pepsi and Coke really did a good job of blowing up the cola segment and now getting into many different beverage categories and doing the same thing. So this was a really cool one, Adil. What do you think?
Yeah, I love this rivalry. I was shocked to find out that Pepsi does as much as it does, but you're so right. Coca-Cola definitely has a bigger brand, more widely recognized, and they kind of keep to themselves. I think that seems to be a theme, is like one goes after another and then another one just kind of focuses on its craft. So, I mean, I'd love to you kind of will see that in our quick hits, I bet, is how one is just focused on its thing, and then the other one really goes after their competitor.
I've always kind of joked how Pepsi was born in the shadows of Coca-Cola, and how I always feel like Coca-Cola will be the lead and the winner, because Pepsi has had to do a lot of really creative things in order to keep up with. One of the more notable things is, if you look back, they actually bought and then eventually sold off Yum Brands, which was the combination of Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC. And they had intentionally acquired that holding company so that they can grow their distribution of Pepsi products as fast as Coke has. So if you think about how Pepsi has had to fight to gain share in the territory, they had to buy restaurants in order to get Pepsi inside of those fountain machines. So it's not easy to fight against Coke, but full credit to Pepsi to really hold their ground. And then obviously PepsiCo now has gotten into the food and snack aisle. And then we're starting to see a lot of that in the market too. If you guys have seen anything around the Super Bowl and you've seen Tostitos with Pepsi, very intentional. That's all full PepsiCo. So I think you'd be shocked out there how many brands PepsiCo owns. And it really seems like their strategy was to diversify as much as they can and start to win share in each of those categories through these diversified portfolios. You can own soda and snacking if you have both of those products in place. You can own that restaurant distribution in fast food if you have those strategic alliances in place. So just a total different strategy, but seems to work really well.
So what do you got? You're going to go first with your quick hit?
But I'm going to start with Starbucks versus Dunkin. So this was really fun. Dunkin launched a campaign called Friends Don't Let Friends Drink Starbucks. And it's a masterclass of using competitive positioning to differentiate yourselves in a crowded market. The campaign positioned Dunkin' as the everyday coffee choice for the average person, in contrast to what it implied was Starbucks' more pretentious, overly complicated coffee culture. I think we could all agree with that. The campaigns were aired across billboards, print ads, and digital, and it effectively worked at making Dunkin' more approachable and relatable to a segment of coffee drinkers who were being alienated by Starbucks' premium pricing and complex product offerings. This wasn't about coffee. It was about identifying with a customer's lifestyle and values. And I think we can see that today, where Dunkin' just resonates more with more of that kind of blue collar person who is just worried about getting a good cup of coffee and a little bit of breakfast at a reasonable price in a convenient way. And then, of course, you see Starbucks double down in the opposite world, where you got unicorn frappuccinos and giving you the full ability to craft your own coffee beverage and whatever and however many pumps of syrup you want in it, and allowing you to do so and even promoting it. So I think this just made total sense. Again, two competitors, two behemoths of coffee locations, but just playing into the market so differently, focused on that customer lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of a go to QT, get some coffee type of guy, but just some black coffee and I'm good. But seeing Dunkin' go at him like that it's really cool. And yeah, Dunkin' is the blue collar man's coffee, especially in Chicago and in the Midwest. Like that's their stronghold. And you don't feel so bougie getting Dunkin'. All right, I got a fun one. BMW versus Mercedes. Look, we both know them as luxury German automakers, but the rivalry between Mercedes-Benz and BMW is as prestigious as it is historic. This competition is not just about cars, it's a battle of philosophies, design, and innovation. Mercedes emphasizes luxury and comfort, while BMW has a clear focus on performance and driving dynamics. BMW's slogan, the ultimate driving machine, has been a direct challenge to Mercedes. Of course, you know Mercedes as the best or nothing. Each slogan really encapsulates the essence of the brand's promises to its customers. But let's talk marketing. Their campaigns have occasionally stoked the flames of its rivalry, albeit often with a wink and a nod, right? One particular campaign, though, that has resurfaced recently on the internet is BMW's cheeky retirement gift to Mercedes-Benz's CEO Dieter Zetsche. The ad features a Zetsche lookalike on his last day at Mercedes. He's turning in his badge, he's waving goodbye, taking selfies, real wholesome stuff. Here's the punchline, though. The Dieter lookalike is shown leaving his home in a BMW i8. Then it simply says, "Thank you, Dieter, for so many years of inspiring competition." It's classic, right? It's a classic best man speech tactic. You show some respect to your homie, but you got to pull their leg. In the audience, everyone's happy for the guy getting married, but they're left lusting for the best man. In this case, it's BMW. It's a classic rivalry and an elevated one. What do you think?
No, that was awesome. I think you really got to sense of what the brand personality is behind that type of tactic, right? Like I think you can play in the competitive field and be as aggressive, and we know German auto advertising is a rough space to play. Between the Mercedes, BMW, Audi, they always got a lot of that infighting happening between them. But when it came to these kind of momentous occasions for the CEO of Mercedes, it was a really good nod, and I think it gave BMW a lot of praise because they got to showcase that they're not just all about that ultimate driving vehicle, but there is a nice person driving it. And I think that was a really good gesture.
Yeah.
My next quick hit is McDonald's versus Burger King. Talk about fighting inside your own backyard. In 2018, Burger King launched a campaign leveraging geofencing technology around more than 14,000 McDonald's locations across the US. Using the Burger King app, customers who came within 600 feet of a McDonald's were offered a Whopper burger for just 1 cent. Once the order was placed, the app would direct them away from McDonald's and to the nearest Burger King to pick up their order. That led to increased app downloads, boosted sales, award-winning campaign work, and it painted Burger King as an innovative and bold brand we see today. And that really resonates with younger demographics. Doing these really bold activations that are very much aggressively competitive. We're literally taking people to McDonald's just so they can get this offer and then revert them away from McDonald's. That got a lot of people invested and engaged. It gave them a really strong and fun thing to be a part of. And not to mention a Whopper for a cent in the app. That's a phenomenal deal. So real kudos to that. I think that is also a good representation of two big dogs of Burger King and McDonald's. But bringing the fight into their own backyard, real strong move there, Burger King.
Yeah, it made me wonder though, like, have we seen anything like this with pizza? Like, there's that field is pretty competitive too, but you never really hear them calling each other out. Does that happen, or am I missing it?
No, I really feel like there's been some aggressiveness in pizza. You're right. I feel like it has been a play off of each other. I think even now they're even offering similar deals. I think Pizza Hut is now doing kind of that 2 for $7 out of the full portfolio. I think there is less aggressive calling out their competitor, more just copying each other. That's kind of what it seems like in pizza.
Yeah, I heard a crazy statistic since we're on the pizza topic that like mom and pop still make up majority of pizza consumption in the US. And it's not actually these big dogs. So I thought that was really interesting. I got a fun one though. This is one that we probably already know, but you can't talk about company rivalries without talking about these two. So before we had the Oppenheimer Barbie rivalry, we had Apple and Microsoft. In fact, this saga stretches back to the start of personal computing. Apple has always had this think different ethos, and they wanted to challenge the status quo. In this case, it was Microsoft. Look, I want you to forget anything you know about Apple. And then when Apple, so here's the thing, years ago, Apple was a David and Goliath rivalry. And when Apple wanted to spar, they went for the jugular. It started it was like, I think 1984, there was a Super Bowl ad that Apple portrayed the Macintosh as the liberator to the monochromatic world of Microsoft. Then you fast forward to a campaign we all grew up on in the mid 2000s. It was Apple's Get a Mac campaign. It was very simple. They personified the Mac and PC, casting Apple as a hip and user-friendly alternative. And it was like, in comparison to this Bill Gates lookalike. So it was really quite the hit, right? So Microsoft seemed undaunted by this, and they just kind of kept focusing on what they did. In fact, they went double down and went more enterprise route. Look, don't get me wrong. Microsoft has still tried. They opened eerily similar stores to Apple stores. They launched a phone with Nokia. They ultimately found their home in investing in emerging companies and kind of going horizontal, right? But today they hold their own. And it's a rivalry that many of us grew up on. We saw it happening. And it kind of comes full circle because with the news that came out last week, Apple has kind of become the Goliath, right? Now it's Apple versus Android and all these antitrust advocates. So it's going to be quite the new rivalry now. And let's see what comes of it.
I'm just thinking about Apple's business now, and it almost feels like everybody now is a rival to Apple. So many people have Apple as the enemy. Spotify and the app against Apple Music, and you got Netflix versus Apple TV, and you got Dropbox versus Apple iCloud. Like I feel like Apple went from being David to now being everyone's enemy across so many different categories. And crazy to see that was in our lifetime ago. That Apple used to be David, and here we are with them being the biggest dog that they are. All right, nice. My last quick hit, the chicken sandwich wars of 2019 unofficially began when Popeyes launched its new chicken sandwich and quickly became a sensation. And what really started the war was a playful Twitter exchange between Popeyes and Chick-fil-A, who was considered the gold standard for fast food chicken sandwich. The tweets went viral and drew in other fast food challengers like Wendy's and McDonald's into the game with their own offerings to compete for king of chicken sandwiches. During this time, I remember we were all just eating a whole lot of chicken sandwiches at one point, having different challenges of which one's the best and trying to argue about who has the better. This is all such a big part of my history at this point. But what we learned was how the competition in the fast food industry can lead to innovation. It leads to consumer excitement and then significant shifts in market positioning. This has definitely become a case study we will read about in marketing books to come. That these chicken sandwich wars of 2019 was a monumental moment in fast food, of where everybody can kind of come in and play, and guess what? Everybody can win. And I think the ones that had sacrificed were the ones that chose to stay out of it. Those like Jack in the Box, who didn't want to come in with a bigger, better chicken sandwich, they got left behind. Taco Bell got left behind. Burgers got left behind. But everybody who wanted into the chicken sandwich craze, they won a lot. And sure as hell did Chick-fil-A, who started this whole thing, poking fun at Popeyes for it. So it's a monumental moment in our history.
Yeah, what is it, Samir? Like, what's this paradox of choice where it's like when you have two sides to pick from, you almost are forced to pick one, right? Like, you see it. I can't help but think of, we talked about automakers, and F1 has Red Bull versus Mercedes. Even though Ferrari holds its own, it's kind of like, do you pick one of those two? And then it's McDonald's versus Burger King. I mean, Chick-fil-A is killing it, but it's still like there's this burger rivalry there, right? I don't know if Chipotle and Qdoba are big enough, but Chipotle kind of holds its own. Eventually, someone's going to come in with the burrito concept that's going to rival them. But maybe it's Cava versus Chipotle, because those are both kind of fast service models. But what is it that it's like when you have this choice being given to you to pick between two, you can't just withstand, like you have to pick one.
And I just feel like we like to be a part of a specific team, and we fight for them in order to feel like we're going to win. And I don't know if there's a little bit of FOMO in here, that if you choose not to participate, then you're just not going to have a good time, or you want to pick the side that you want to be on and play the game, have the debate, make the points, like make the cases. I don't know. I guess there's just a little bit of this debate culture that's inside of us, that we just love to fight and we love to compete. And we even make that into the places where we want to eat food and what we think is the better burger. Is it the Big Mac or Whopper? I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are now thinking about it. What side do you want to take? And you guys probably can think of a lot of reasons to support it. There's just something competitive that just comes out in us when it comes to these things.
Yeah, there's like a really cool series on, I think it's a History Channel, but it's like the foods that built America or something like that. And then they have like the men who built America, and there's multiple types of them. But that's like totally my type of thing to watch. Like I love stuff like that, where you see all these brands, up and coming brands, and how the things that they had to do to compete to get up there. But really, it's like there's these two clear winners, and you kind of pick between those two, and you have your favorites. So I mean, RC Cola never could compete. You know, it was like Pepsi and Coke. It's just like that's where it ended up. So it's this is awesome. This was a great episode. I think you did a great job setting this one up.
And I think one thing that we've learned from all of these case studies is when you have competition, you can all win. And we've seen that across the board, that a lot of this competitiveness that comes out with brands actually leads to incremental sales for both. So in some way, there's something interesting here about engaging with your competitor in the marketing field can actually be a really good thing, that it's not always about playing defense. You can actually both grow and both win. And that's why people do it. And that's why brands choose to do it. I mean, Wendy's is on Twitter every day roasting everyone. And they're trying to find a rival who is worthy enough of keeping up with Wendy's on Twitter. But I don't know if anyone has, but people have tried. Duolingo, I think, is working on it. But we'll see how they both can win on that one.
Yeah, no, I it's going to be really fun to see, like, now the AI wars are happening. So like ChatGPT versus Bard. Well, what's Bard? It's not Bard anymore. What is it?
Copilot?
From
Gemini.
Gemini. That's right. I was going to say Genesis. Yeah. Gemini. So it's, there you go. Right. Like one was first and one is like an afterthought. And we still, even like ChatGPT has become a verb, right? Like the way Google was. And so being first matters in many cases, but then, you know, in this case, Gemini is the Pepsi, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to, to put their footing in the AI wars. This is just a never ending thing. This is human nature. You're right. We do love to compete, and we're going to see tons of these rivalries in the future. But one thing I will ask before we sign it off, Samir, whenever you guys see our Instagram posts about these rivalries, go ahead and tell us what side you're on. You see the Pepsi Coca-Cola one, tell us what side you're on. BMW Mercedes, would love to hear it.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Mad Men.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Mad Men.